And thank you for joining us here on PM Express. It's a big day for our constitution, democracy, the balance of power in Parliament. This verdict has serious consequences indeed, and we're going to be getting into that. We're going to look at the big picture because the question is, what now? The ruling has calmed down, but what now? Very fascinating outcomes that a lot of people are predicting, and we're going to get to the bottom of this. Let's start because there's a lot to get through for you. We know, if you're just joining primetime television at 9 p.m. and you haven't heard, you probably just returned from work, the Supreme Court today has ruled that this man here, he's a member of Parliament for Assin North. He can no longer go to Parliament. He can no longer perform the duties of Parliament, and until the substantive case before the Supreme Court is heard. So what means in effect is that the NDC will no longer have a seat in Parliament, but this is an interlocutory injunction. So this is going to be so until a matter is determined. Nobody knows how long it's going to be, except if you read, and I've been reading the Supreme Court judgment that thankfully is out, and you must applaud the Supreme Court for being really timely in releasing the judgment so we can all read and be informed and end the speculation debate. They have indicated that they want the substantive matter determined expeditiously, and so they've already asked the parties to file additional processes later this month. And so that is the case. But what it is James Achikwesi cannot hold himself out as a member of Parliament. The Assin North constituents will no longer have him on the floor on their behalf. That is the consequence of this. Now, how did the court rule? The court ruled 5-2. So there were 7 justices in all, and 5 of them ruled that he should be injuncted. He should be stopped from performing his duties as a member of Parliament for now, until the case is determined. 2 of them disagreed that, he can continue with the status quo, which is what indeed was happening. He was going to court, he was going to Parliament. There's been challenges on this. So that is the decision of the court, and this is interesting. So this is not unanimous. It's 5-2 of a majority decision. I talked about the status quo. That was also a subject of some debate in the ruling of the court and explaining it. The 5 who said he cannot hold himself, they talked about the status quo. They said the status quo is what the High Court has decided. The High Court decision is that he did not qualify to be a member of Parliament in the first place, and he was injuncted, but as you know, on the 6th into the 7th of January 2021, he was in Parliament causing a lot of controversy. So there's a lot of intrigue there. So who are these judges who came to this conclusion? The majority decision, these were the individuals who, of course, came to that conclusion that he cannot carry himself out as a member of Parliament. Then Justice Doche, Justice Mariama Owusu, Justice Gertrude Tokono, Justice Professor Evans Mensah, and Emmanuel Yonukulendi, who had written that opinion. And the dissenting judges, Justice Agnes Doje and Justice Nanya Megache, came to the conclusion, very fascinating positions taken by both. I want to go through that a bit for you right now. These 5 said this in essence, that the court ruled that the case filed raises serious allegations of constitutional breach. In fact, they placed a lot of weight on this constitutional breach in coming to the conclusion that there's a reason to injunct. There's a reason to stop him for now, because the constitutional breach for them is a key. In fact, the phrase used is that we all have an interest in the Constitution, right? And so this matter affects not only James Achikwesi, all the applicants, all the constituents, all Parliament. It affects everybody else. We have a community of interest, I think is the phrase, a community of interest in the Constitution. So that was key. And then the sovereignty of Ghanaians be breached if the MP is not restrained. They also said such a breach is incalculable and cannot be remedied. That's a very interesting point indeed. And that if he's not injuncted, as it is right now, the argument is that the harm this will be done. You can't calculate it because we're talking about the supreme law of the land. The reverse, when it comes to the 2 dissenting opinions, that's so very, very interesting. Their point is fundamental, that this case was already decided by the High Court, right? And so they make the point that the case that has been brought to the Supreme Court is academic, simply academic, because the High Court has already decided and giving the applicant in this case all the reliefs he seeks already. He already has everything. So what's the point in coming to the Supreme Court? In fact, they concluded that this is frivolous. This is not something that they should waste their time on, and it is an academic. And if you read the reasons why they will injunct a matter, I mean, the principles that governs an injunction, one of them is to determine whether the case itself is frivolous or not. Those dissenting said it's frivolous because the matter will already be decided by the High Court. If decided by the High Court, why do you come here with this? And then the second thing, who is going to suffer the greater damage, right? They come to the conclusion that the applicant in this case suffers no damage at all. Why? Because the High Court has given him everything he wants already. If you really, really intend on benefiting and enjoying the orders of the court, you should simply go back to the High Court and get an injunction. That is, if James Achikwesen is not obeying the orders of the court and violating the Constitution, go back to the High Court and get reliefs there. And so he doesn't suffer any damage at all. And so they threw it out. Those are the two views expressed there. We'll get into the key issues here. But there are timelines, and if you haven't followed this, you know what happens. James Achikwesen wins the polls in the elections in 2020. Then Michael Ankoma Nimfa, he petitions the High Court first. He alleges when he petitioned that Mr. Kwesing was a dual citizen, was holding a Canadian citizenship, whilst he was also a Ghanaian, and was here trying to run as a member of parliament. The Constitution expressly forbids that from happening. You can't hold a true citizenship, two passports and run, right? So that was his case in 2020. Now, January 2021, fast forward, the High Court then restrained Mr. Kwesing from holding himself out as a member of parliament. July 2021, the High Court nullified the Assin North polls and calls for fresh elections. They ruled, fundamentally on behalf of Mr. Nimfa. And it says the MP then appealed at the High Court after this. He didn't stop. He goes to the appeals court on the back of this. Then January 2022, Michael Nimfa files a case at the Supreme Court. What does he want? He wants a court to stop Mr. Kwesing from performing parliamentary duties. He takes the substantive case, in essence, back to the Supreme Court, wants an interpretation that he did not qualify. The Supreme Court should interpret 94(2)(a), which says that if you are a dual citizen, you cannot run for public office in Ghana. But that's the case that has been determined by the High Court. So we'll get some clarity on this. Then March 2022, Court of Appeal strikes out the appeal filed by James Achikwesen. So along the way, James Achikwesen keeps losing, right? That's why the Supreme Court, those who descended said, but you have everything already, so why are you here? And in April 2022, Supreme Court now restrained the Achikwesen from carrying himself out. That's why we're having this conversation. Now, the reactions have poured in. The minority in parliament is considering a review. Constituents split on this verdict, but there are many fundamental issues that we need to interrogate. So what happens now? Okay, so he can't hold himself. So what happens to the constituents who require representation on the floor of parliament? So is it 274 and not 275? And what does that mean for the voting quorum question that the Supreme Court recently decided? I mean, so there are really fundamental issues. And how long do the people of Assin North have to wait until they get a replacement? Can the EC go ahead and call a by-election and organize one? Should Parliament simply, through the clerk, reform the Electoral Commission that there's a vacancy? There are real matters still need to be decided. And I want to get some clarity for you.